Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, and welcome to the Integration Framework presentation. My name is Dan Christensen Hurlik. I'm a new product manager for integrations here at Dynamicweb. And the agenda today is for me to cover, well, basically an introduction to the Integration Framework, talk about key advantages. Then I'll move into features at a glance. I will talk about the code units for AX and D365. Then there's a demo session. I'm going to cover 3 demos. We'll get into the specifics later. And then there's going to be a Q&A session at the end. So I know my talk can barely be squeezed into 40 minutes. So please note down your questions, and then we'll take it on the Q&A session. Yes. And also, I can't see on the attendees list, but if there are any from the US, I'll just say happy 4th of July yesterday. All right, so let's head into the introductions. And I'll answer why a new framework, why now, and a comparison to the previous framework. And also a short conversation around which ERP systems are supported. Yes, so why a new framework? The old framework 1, has been in service for 6 odd years, and that's definitely before my time. And over the years, I know we've had many improvement requests, and we've added that throughout the period, but we've also listened and now added all the new functionality into a new framework. So some of the things that you see is that you can pull related products from your API system. You can you get anonymous user prices, you get custom prices, just to name a few. And why now? Well, the development has primarily been driven by the need to integrate with AX and obviously D365. And some of you might have heard the designation beta. I think it's important to note that the integration framework is not beta. It's only the code units that are. And the reason is fairly simple. We have a big customer live in the US, and we have 3 in the pipeline, 2 in Europe. And we just need to see when we get at the other end of that, well, are there some stuff that we are still missing? So it has nothing to do with our confidence in the fact that the code units work, because they do. It's just the fact that we're not 100% sure that we have all the functionality that we want. So this is a busy slide, perhaps the most busy slide I have, and perhaps it's better served to view after the webinar. But it's my best attempt at comparing the new framework to the old, still keeping in mind that it's hard to designate what's actually batch, what's live, what's the framework, what are the code units. So this is my best attempt, and we're going to cover all of the new improvements as we go along and talk about the features. And then I've just highlighted prices here with live integration, because we can just do so much more with the new, as you will see. Then I pulled up a architecture slide. So this is how it looks when you install the plugin code unit in your ERP system. You install the connector service on a server, and then you also set it up on the Dynamicweb website. And I use this standard slide that you've probably seen many times before, just to say that it is 365 and AX that we fully support with the new framework. So the new code units for NAV and Business Central, which is just the cloud NAV version, we still need to provide those code units before we can give you all the functionality from Framework 2 on those systems. But rest assured, you have all the previous code units still available for all the other systems. Then I'll go into key advantages. It's just a one slider. First one is plug and play. And this comes from the fact that we've basically just bundled way more standard requests. So we reduce the need to do custom coding. Then the next one here is robust, more data, more control, more speed. I know those are catchphrases, or at least they sound like it. But as I'll cover in the feature section and perhaps also in the demo, you'll see that these are not merely words. They actually mean something. Then we're saying future ready. So part of that is we support cloud and on-premise implementations. But it also has to do with the fact that when you add your custom logic or custom code this time around, you can actually do it through extension or through overriding our classes. So you don't change the class definitions, you don't change the code and then recompile. So that means you can survive software updates. So you can always be on the latest version of the integration framework and still have your custom business logic survive. Then we're saying faster time to market. Well, partly it has to do with the fact that you have a reduced need to do custom code, so that can bring you faster to market. But it also has to do with the fact that we've made a new test mode in the connector service, which allow you to pass or feed static XML pages or files into Dynamicweb, so you don't have to necessarily wait for an ERP developer to set it all up on the ERP system. I'll come into this much more when we talk about the features, but also as part of the demo. So let's take a look at the features. I'm going to cover batch certification. I'm going to cover the live integration, synchronization of queued orders, then the extensibility to give you custom code ability, and then the improved workflow through the new test mode in the connector service. So for paging and batch certification, the big thing here with the new framework is that we allow you to add batch IDs to each batch of data that you send over. So if I just mark it here, so you can see here's an example where we get orders from the ERP system and we get a batch ID. So that means that each batch is certified and Dynamicweb will tell the ERP system once or when it has actually added the data. And so the ERP system will not send new batches of data before it knows for sure that we've handled the data on the DB side. And this plays along well with pagination, so you can add how many records do you pull over in each batch. So this gives you the ability to run batch jobs until done with a guarantee that it is really done. You don't have any gaps where all of a sudden you didn't get the data due to an unstable connection. And one more thing, you can add custom modifiers. So let's say you had 3 websites where you wanted to pull data from one ERP system. Well, then the code unit and the framework can sort of like play together and make sure that we are now looking at 3 series of batch certifications instead of just one if you only had one page. Then for live integration, we've I'll begin with 2 new providers. So we have a shipping fee provider and a discount provider. They're similar in the sense that they allow you to calculate things on the ERP side. So you can have Dynamics calculate shipping fees or complex discounts and then just present the results on the website without using Dynamicweb's shipping fee providers or discount system. And then obviously to prevent lots of live calls all the time to stress the ERP system. We allow you to store this in session state, so we do fewer requests. Then I've attempted to do an animation. I'm not sure if it works well over the webinar. What I'm trying to do here is say that we've reorganized the UI when you set up your live integration into meaningful sections. I'm just going to explode it here, and hopefully it's not too small. So now everything related to general settings are added to the general settings, so you can specify the number, format, culture, and which shop you're doing the live integrations for. In terms of products, we have the ability to enable, disable live prices. One of the new things is that you can lazy load product information and also include variants in your product information request. Then if we go to orders, you can choose to queue orders and allow payments if there's no connection. I'm going to cover that in the next slide. And you can save a copy of the original order XML, which is quite handy, and I'm going to show that in the demo. Yeah, and then there's a section on how to use the anonymous user account, which is new compared to the old framework. Yes, and then if I haven't stated it clearly enough in the beginning, the big thing here is that we calculate discounts and custom prices. So with custom prices, we pull up the trade agreement associated with the customer account, and we serve the right price based on the trade agreement. So for synchronization of queued orders, so first of all, we allow this, and there can be many reasons for doing it, or at least two. And one is that perhaps the connection is a bit slow, and you somehow want to speed up the checkout process for the users of the website. So you don't have to do the live call to create the order right there and then. But it could also be that you have lots of online orders and it stresses your ERP system, and you want to group it together and have it be processed at a more convenient time where there's less stress on the system. Then for extensibility, we're going to demo this example, but the point is the integration framework fires notifications which you can subscribe to, and then here we change the order XML after it's being generated, and in this example we apply a gold member status to VIP customers so that we can tell on the EP side that this is an order you have to expedite quicker than otherwise. You can also extend the product providers to, let's say you wanted to show prices a little differently. Perhaps the prices are price per kilogram in the ERP, and you want to show it as price per 100 grams or whatever on the website. So examples like that is covered in the API documentation, and you can also see many more possibilities to extend both the product providers and subscribe to notifications. So I'm going to add that, or the link is added here, so when you do eventually go through the slides again, you can just click on that link and see our API documentation. And again, I'll demo this when we get to the demo section. Yeah, and by the way, I can see that there is a question. I'll cover that when we get to the QA. Yes, improved integration workflows. This is the last feature I'm going to cover. So perhaps this is a scenario you are familiar with, that the the front-end developers or the dynamic web developer waits for live or synchronized XML data from the ERP system, because the ERP developer has to set it up first, perhaps even needs to do some customizations, and so there can be delays due to that. So we now allow the connector service to mimic the behavior of the ERP, and by that we mean you can have it send over XML files to Dynamic Web without having the connection to the ERP system. And that allows the Dynamic Web developer to work with data way earlier than previously. I'm going to cover this again in the demo, because I'm not sure if this is even enough to explain the benefits, but this is sort of like at a high level. But before we get into the demo portion, I'll just talk about the code units. I'll begin with the standard batch requests, and then talk about what's delivered by us, and then some specifics about AX and 365, and then on how you set up the code units on the ERP system. So this is a screenshot from the backend of our demo site or demo server. So here we've basically created an import job for all of the standard batch requests. You also have the list here. And if you all know the old list from the previous code units, you can clearly see that we have more new standard batch requests. Also export orders, which you can utilize when you do the order synchronization that I covered previously. And then we also have delete requests, which is to say if you delete stuff or deactivate stuff on the ERP side, that can also be migrated over to Dynamic Web through batch requests. So what's delivered? We deliver the source code. You can just download it from our download section, and there's going to be a link later. And basically you get an XPO file that you can install in your ERP system. And here you have an example of the source code for AX. And it's actually an example where I've zoomed in on the web server itself and the get ecom data call that you can do. And you can see here are the products, the related products, and so on and so forth. Apart from that, you get a guide on how to install it, and also how to customize the code unit for each system. Then on to specifics about AX and 365. The key difference is the deployment process. It's a bit more complex, as some of you might already know, on 365, and it has to do with the fact that you have to go through lifecycle services on Azure and so on. So I've provided links to each deployment process. Then I've added a screenshot here of, well, it's an architecture slide from the Commerce Runtime, which is part of the retail module of Dynamics 365 and AX. And I've added it here because people have asked us. Our code units do not access the CRT. And that's important to state, especially if you have conversations with potential customers. It's something we want to improve in the future. We don't have a specific date yet, but it's just important to note. So that's why there's a big stop sign. The good thing is that we can integrate to any AX and 365 system, so you don't have to have the whole retail module in use. Yes. Then let's talk about the setup of the code units. When you have them installed in your ERP system, and then you have to go through some integration parameters. There are some general parameters. There are product parameters. There are for orders and customers and inventory and items. I've added specific guides for each ERP system here. But the point is, you set up something like the default language, the country, the anonymous user account to use when you set up your live integration. And for products, you specify which hierarchy to pull products from. And also, if there are relations like frequently brought together, you can also set up those relations. So now you know you have to do some setup on the ERP side as well. All right, finally we get to the demo portion. Hopefully that's going to be a bit more fun than the previous slides. I'm going to cover just plain vanilla Dynamics 365 integration. So we're going to look at an order from the ERP system intercepted through the connector service, and then finally look at it on the Dynamicweb side. And I'm running a Dynamicweb 9.4. Then I'll go into this improved integration workflow, which is this thing about adding XML files to Dynamicweb through the connector service. And then we're going to talk about, or I'm going to show how you extend functionality to add gold member status to orders from VIP customers. All right, so we're going to view the sales order in the ERP system. We're going to intercept it through the connector service, and we're going to look at it at the Dynamicweb side. So let's just begin with the ERP system. So let me just find the right browser. All right. So this is Dynamics 365, as some of you might know. And I'm going into sales orders, and I'm going to look up a specific sales order that I created this morning. And it has two speakers, D003 and 001, with unit prices of $220 US and 480. And the total is $700 US. Then I said we would go through the connector service. I'm actually cheating a bit because I'm using the tester tool, which is similar, and some of you might know the difference. I'm going to show the connector service in subsequent demos, so no worries. So I've set up my connector to look at this specific ERP system, and I've run a request for sales headers or orders, and I've asked to get 1,000. Obviously, this takes a bit of time, so I've cheated and I've done it in advance. But I'll just look up the XML, and then let's just begin from fresh. So we want to look up the order ID from 365. There it is, $700 US. And then here's the order ID from Dynamicweb side. So let's look up the individual order lines. So here's the speaker 03 with $220 US, and the other one 01 with 480. So that's intercepted through the connector service. And then finally, I wanted to show, all right, where is my Dynamicweb backend? So order 386, $700 US, and there are the unit prices again. So that's sort of like a full circle. Should show it here. Then I'll show the improved integration workflow. And just to recap, this is the conventional phase of three phases of an integration project. You install the plugin, you install the connector service, and then you configure on the dynamic website, and only then can you get data. So you introduce waiting time. But if you just agree on the XML forward beforehand, you can mark the XML data and just say, okay, this is the XML data I expect to get in the future. So now EAP developer, you can go work on it, and I'll just mark the data or whatever I want to do. Perhaps I want to do one dump from the EAP system and change it. But in any case, I can just, as a developer on the dynamic website, install the connector service locally, add the XML files to it, and then have it feed into my batch integration and get data that way. So no need to wait on the EAP developer. So I'll demo that, and to do that, I have to go onto my remote server, and let me just show. So the connector service is just installed in program files, and in samples I've added 2 XML files. I've added one called countries. So this is just a long list of country codes, and I've added get countries, which is just a short file with US and also just marked data. So now I want to demo that you can pull that, or that connector service can actually feed those static XML files into Dynamic Web. So here's an example of the batch request. So I'm going to call this test file, and just to test it on live, I'll just hijack the live connection. So now I pull data from the get countries XML, and you have to excuse me, I can't remember if it's the one with all the country codes or just a few. Yeah, so that was the one with just US and XX. And then if you pull the other one, you get all the country codes. So clearly you can have like as many XML files that you want, and while you wait for the EAP developer to get you the data, you can just add it in through the connector service as a sample. All right. Then I'll demo the gold member example. So I'll pull up, let me see my Visual Studio. So I've extended or overridden the onNotify class, and what I do is after an order XML has been generated, I take a look at my user and I say, is this a gold member? And in this example, we just apply it to everyone, so there's no specific logic to look up the user. But then we apply a new node saying, is gold member true or false? And then you build that and you add it to your bin folder. Let me just find. So this is my website, so I add it to the bin folder. And so there's one called is gold customer, so that's my DLL with that extension code. And so when I go back into my Dynamic Web backend and I open up my order, go through live integration, I'll just show you that the gold member status is applied. So first off, I'll open up the original order XML, which is how it looks before we do anything with it. So no custom information or columns are added here. But then, because we apply that extension, after it's been generated, we actually add is gold member. So this is an example of you overriding or extending basic functionality through notification subscribers, and thus altering the order XML. Yes, so let's get back. So that concludes the demos. So we can now go into Q&A. So let me just open up. All right, so I have one question. Perhaps I'll allow you to add some more questions, and then just go to, to this slide on how you can get started. So you can download the DLL and the source code for the code units, and you can read more about the integration framework here. And then obviously you can always contact me. Let me just, so this is my first rodeo with GoToWebinars. I'm just trying to find the questions. Okay, so we have one question from SmartPage, which is, what does lazy load of products mean? So it's an AJAX play. So if you want to look up live information of products, then you don't have to wait for a full load. You can just load it as you need it. But I think we can take this offline, meaning I can try to give a more exact answer. If you want, Anders, I can probably link you to a better run through on the doc side. Then there's a thank you for the demo. That's not a question. And finally, what type of discount support in AX? So does it support multi-level discount in AX? I think I probably have to investigate on this. As far as I remember, multi-level discount. So I'm not sure if this refers to multi-buy or mix and match on the more complex types, which you found in retail module, or if it's just more discounts, and then which discount does it apply? If it's the last one, then yes, we support multiple discounts being fired, and then you get the best discount or the final price. Does it support coupons? No, that has to be a custom thing. I mean, we have coupons in Dynamic Web, so you can use Dynamic Web coupons, but again, I think coupons is a retail concept. So that's something we would support fully when we can integrate with the CRT or the commerce runtime. So I hope that answers your question, Tang. And if not, you're welcome to. I'll tell you what, I'll follow up with you offline, so perhaps I can give you a more detailed answer. All right, so that's that concludes all the questions. We have perhaps a few more minutes, so if there are any last minute questions, I'll wait for you to type them in. Otherwise, for everyone else, and if you don't have any question, I'll let you off the hook and say feel free to contact me. Here is my email, and sorry, there's the thank you slide. So unless you have any more questions, you are welcome to leave the webinar. Thank you for your attendance. All right, no new questions. So I'll end the webinar and see you on the other side.